back to read Chapter 7 of the Bookwanderers. This chapter is Imaginary Friends. An hour or so later, with a slight smell of burned sugar in the air, Jack sent Tilly around to the Crumbs with some pop cakes. It had taken him a few batches, but he had finally perfected them so that when you bit into one, you got a mouthful of lovely sticky honey. As Tilly stepped onto the street with the fresh air and streams of people clutching takeaway coffee cups and mobile phones were reassuringly solid and familiar. Pushing open the door to Crumb, she saw that Oscar was in his usual spot, this time doodling on a notepad. "What's that I spy?" Mary said. "Is it an offering from Jack?" "Yes," Tilly replied, holding the cake box up. "Pop cakes fresh from the oven. They're best now while the honey is still a bit warm." She opened the box and Mary took one. "Jack sent enough for Oscar too," Tilly said loudly, and he looked up hopefully. "Let me bring you two some drinks to have with them," Mary said, pulling another chair up to the table Oscar was sitting at and nudging Tilly into it. "What are you drawing?" Tilly asked him, as she took her coat off. Oscar spread his arms over his paper, like he was trying to stop someone from copying a test at school. "Oh, nothing much. Only scribbling. Just something to do," he said. "Oh, okay," Tilly said, embarrassed at having made him uncomfortable. She messed with the ends of her hair as he painstakingly smoothed a bent corner of paper. "So, what's your favorite kind of cake?" Oscar asked, awkwardly after a pause. "Carrot cake, I think," Tilly said, surprised at the line of questioning. "What's yours?" "Red velvet. I like that too," Tilly said, unsure how the conversation had dried up so much since this morning. "I like carrot cake too." The silence seemed to solidify around them. "Anyway, I'm not really very hungry," Tilly said, standing up and banging her knee against the table as her coat sleeve got twisted around the back of her chair. "I was just bringing the cakes over for your mom. See you in school." "Don't go," Oscar said abruptly. Watching Tilly untangle herself, she stopped wrestling with her coat. I just wanted to ask you which book you decided to read for English homework," Oscar said, picking at his nails. "I think I'm going to read one of my mom's favorite books," Tilly said. "You know, I found that box of her books the other day. Well, I thought I might choose one of those that I haven't read yet. Maybe Treasure Island? "Oh, I love that one," Oscar said. "You've read it?" "Well, I've listened to the audiobook, if that counts." "It definitely counts," Tilly said. They both fell silent as Mary brought them 2 glasses of orange juice and 2 pop cakes on patterned plates. "Everything okay?" she said. "Yes, fine, thank you," Tilly replied automatically. Then after a moment she asked, "Mary, who's your favorite character from a book?" What a tricky question. Mary paused in thought as Tilly and Oscar ate their pop cakes. "I think it would have to be Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Have either of you read it?" Oscar hadn't, but Tilly nodded her head. Although she hadn't actually read it, she'd only seen the TV version that her grandma watched every Christmas. "Do you ever think about what you would say to her if she was real?" "Can't say that I have ever before, Tilly, but it's an interesting question, isn't it? I suppose I would ask her what it was like in her family and what Mr. Darcy was really like. I must admit it, Tilly, that part of the reason I love her so much is how much she reminds me of your mom." "What?" Tilly blurted, remembering the conversation with her grandma earlier. "Yes, I always thought that Bea had a similar sense of humor to Lizzie's, and your mom was a very sharp observer of people. Tilly, honestly, He used to make me giggle describing some of the customers who came into Pages and Company. Goodness, it would be fun, wouldn't it, to be able to talk to Lizzie Bennet? Although I wonder if she would be like I imagine her, if I actually met her. I bet she wouldn't, Oscar said. I think if you met your favorite character, they'd just be disappointing. It'd be like meeting a famous person. They wouldn't be as nice as you thought. They probably wouldn't want to talk to you anyway. Well, I think it's a lovely idea. If only it were real. Eh, Tilly? Mary laughed and went back to the counter. Tilly looked at Oscar appraisingly. Oscar, she whispered, what would you do if it was real? If what was real? Oscar asked, confused. If you could really talk to your favorite characters. I don't know. Ask some stuff. It's not, though, is it? That's the whole point. Tilly kept going. But maybe it is. But really, Tilly, it isn't. Why are you going around in circles like this? He sounded bemused. Tilly took a deep breath. I'm seeing characters from my favorite book, she announced. Oscar slowly looked up at her as though he wasn't sure whether she was having him on. Tilly? No, don't look like that, Tilly interrupted. I swear I was reading my mom's old copy of Anne of Green Gables when a girl called Anne with red hair turned up in the book shop, and then I read Alice in Wonderland and a girl called Alice wearing a big blue dress appeared. Oh, and I think my granddad might have been talking to Sherlock Holmes as well. And then my grandma was talking to someone she said reminded her of my mom, like, your grandparents think they're seeing book characters too? Oscar said nervously. Oh, no. Well, I don't know. I haven't asked them. I need to do some more investigating first. Was it your mom's old copy of Alice in Wonderland as well? Oscar asked after a pause. Yes, from her box of old books, Tilly explained impatiently. My mom gave you that photo of her yesterday, didn't she? He went on. Yes, Anne. Well, don't take this the wrong way, Oscar said quietly. But do you think maybe it just been a bit weird time with all the stuff about your mom coming up, and the books and the photo, and maybe the characters aren't actually in the shop. You're just imagining them a bit harder than usual. I mean, I definitely had an imaginary friend when I was little. He was called Xavier, and he was from Newcastle, and he was red-headed. But anyway, you don't need to be embarrassed with me. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have my mom around. Tilly's face flushed hot. You don't believe me? It's not that I don't believe you, it's just... I should have known you wouldn't understand, she said, standing up. Why? Because no one ever does. Sorry, Oscar said, sounding embarrassed as she felt. It's just, you're not really talking to a fictional characters, don't you? Tilly grabbed what was left of her popcake and walked out without saying goodbye. End of chapter 7. We're going to go ahead and continue with chapter 8. A bit of nonsense never hurt anyone. Tilly didn't pick up her mom's copy of Alice in Wonderland again. Instead, she chose a brand new book that she never read before and that her mom had definitely never read. She took it over to her favorite comfy sofa to find it already occupied. At one end was Anne picking at the end of her hairs, and at the other was Alice looking around impatiently. Tilly waved, a little startled to see them together. Oh, how curious, Alice said. You're just the same as before. They both stared at Tilly. Why wouldn't I be the same? I don't know why you're so surprised. I should be more surprised that you two know each other, Tilly said, and Anne and Alex exchanged another look as if seeing each other properly for the first time. Have we met? Alice said, peering into Anne's face. How can you not know if you know each other? Tilly said. That doesn't make any kind of sense. A bit of nonsense never hurt anyone. Did it, Carrot Top? Alice said cheerfully, yanking one of Anne's plates. How dare you? Anne said. It's not carrot-colored at all. It's auburn. I only meant it affectionately, Alice insisted. Your hair is lovely and carroty. One of my very great friends has hair that is similar, only most of the time he hides it under a hat. I don't know why you are so touchy about people pointing out what it is. After all, a fact that cannot really be denied. But it's ever so thoughtless to point out other people's faults, Anne said. I would hardly come up to you and inform you that you are quite rude, and if we're brutally honest, that I think you've shrunk since the last time you've been here. Well, I'm not in charge of that, Alice said crossly. I cannot help any of it. And I am not in charge of the color of my hair, Anne retorted. I don't think you would be, Anne, at all if you didn't have red hair, Tilly offered. But when it comes down to it, I am not so attached to being Anne replied. If I was born and I had beautiful hair as dark as a raven or blonde hair, she glanced resentfully at Alice, then maybe my parents would have been moved to call me something altogether more elegant, like Ermintrude or Cordelia. I do not agree at all, Alice said. Sometimes I feel that my Aliceness is the only thing I ever know to be true, even when everything around me is acting very strangely indeed. What do you think, Tilly? And both girls turned to look at her, waiting for an answer. Oh, I don't really know. I'm not entirely sure what Tilliness is, to be honest, or if I have any of it, or if I'd still have it if I were to be called something different. But Matilda Pages is such a wonderful name to have, Anne said. It would be a waste if you didn't think about it just a little. It is a name made for adventuring. But Matilda Pages is such a wonderful name to have, Anne said. It would be a waste if you didn't think about it just a little. It is a name made for adventuring. It's a name to be the head of an army or whispered in a magical forest, don't you think? A name for brave deeds. Be brave, be curious, be kind, Tilly said quietly. Why exactly, Anne said. I knew you understood, really. I just need an adventure to find me, Tilly said. Why you can't wait for an adventure to find you, Matilda, Anne said. You must go and find adventure and shake it firmly by the hand as you set out toward the horizon together. I agree, Alice said. This is the first sensible thing you've said, not to mention you have a whole bookshop. Your name to it, Matilda. Does it belong to your parents? My parents died when I was a baby, Tilly said, using the same word she always did when someone asked about them. It belongs to my grandparents. Why, I'm an orphan too, Anne said solemnly. Tilly felt a skinny hand take hers, looked down to see Anne's fingers intertwined with her own. It's not something Alice will understand. It is a difficult thing to bear, even if you are surrounded by good people, who are endlessly kind and good to you. But it is not all woe. I used to think the kindred spirit it's hard to find. But look, you found two just this afternoon. And for just that moment, it seemed to be wholly unimportant whether Anne and Alice were real or not. Okay, the next chapter is going to be chapter 9. Read outside your comfort zone. Hope you enjoy. Bye.